All right, welcome back to another video in the Complete Web Dev series. If you've made it this far, first of all, I just want to say I'm incredibly proud of you. You're doing a great job. Go ahead and leave me a comment below of the thing you're most excited about that you've learned so far in this series, and let me know what you're looking forward to learning. All right, so go ahead and subscribe as well so you don't miss any of my videos. And if you'd like any merch, you can go to freeskills.life. And enough plugging myself, let's get going. I'm going to leave my AC on, so please excuse the weird noise there. Alright, so let's switch over to this screen here. And the first thing I'm going to do is create a new branch for us to work on. So we are in the 20th video of this. So what we're going to do is git checkout -b v20. And then I'm going to go ahead and push that up to the remote GitHub repository. Alright, so once we've done that, we are ready to go. Now, where we left off in the last video is we're building this register form right here, and we need another select, because I want to be able to select between authentication, like an admin user or an editor user. Okay, so this isn't going to be available to the public. Eventually, this form is simply going to be used by the admin users to add other users here. So we want to keep building up this form. So let's go ahead and build our form helper for our select so that we can add that select block. So if you click over to your FH, so our form helpers class, let's go and underneath the input block, let's add a new one called, we'll do public static function, and we're going to call this a select block. And this is going to take a label, it's going to take an ID, a value, it's going to take options, it's going to take its input attributes, and that'll be an empty array by default, and that needs the $sign here. I'm going to close my Explorer so we have just a little more room here to see what's going on. And then we'll do our wrapper attributes, which will also be an empty array, and we will do our errors, which will also be an empty array. Then we're going to open and close some curly brackets here, and let's start building this out. So the first thing we want to do is let's just do our input attributes, and that's going to equal self append errors. Now we have to do this first. So our key here is going to be our ID, and the input attributes will be input attributes, and then we'll pass in our errors into this. The next thing we want to do is turn that into a string. So we're going to put input attributes is equal to self process attributes, and then we will just pass our input attributes into that. And then we're going to go ahead and do our wrapper string here, and that will be self process attributes, and that will be the wrapper attributes that we'll pass right on down there. The next thing that we're going to do is get any sort of error message we may have, and that is going to be equal to array key exists, and we're going to look for the ID in the errors array. If that exists, then we're going to return errors ID, else we're just going to return an empty string there. Okay, so now we've got all of that set up, so now we need to actually build the HTML out. And so what we're going to do here is create HTML is equal to, and we will go ahead and give it our div with a class equal to, well, you know what, no class there. We'll do div, and we're going to put in our wrapper string here. There we go. The next thing that we want to do is we're going to concatenate onto our HTML string, and here we're going to add our label. So it'll be a label. We'll give it a 4, and this, and this 4 will be the ID that's passed in, and then we'll, inside of this label tag, we're going to go ahead and pass down our label like that. And I gotta spell it correctly. All right, the next thing we need is to start out with our select element, and here it's just going to be a select, and then the ID is going to be equal to ID. The name is going to also be equal to the ID. And then we're going to pass the rest of the input attributes in right there. And then we're going to close that select. The next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to need to loop through all of we're going to need to loop through all of our values here and create options for that. So let's just do a for each here, and we're going to say for each options as val display. Okay, so we're going to get these are going to be an associative array passed into these options, and this will be the value of the option, and this will be the displayed label for the option. So for each one of those, we are going to concatenate onto our HTML string, and we are going to put an option in here. So I'll just open and close those, and then we're going to give this option a value equal to, in this case it's going to be val, and then the option we're going to use here is the display. Okay, now we also we want to know if this is a selected value. So if they do pass in a value here, we want to select the correct option. So we're going to create why is this offset? A selected variable here, and the selected variable is going to be equal to val, and if that val is equal to our value, which is up here, then what we want to do is we want to add a string with a space, and we'll do selected here, and we'll add another space at the end there, else we just want to have an empty string there. Okay, so now we can take that and we can actually add this in to the option. So this will build out all of our options, and then if our value is equal to the current value of the iteration of the loop, it's going to put the word selected inside this option, and that will auto select that option. I guess I'll fix that like that. And then after the for each, we need to close, we'll concatenate onto our HTML string, and we need to close our select like this. And then we need to add our error message. So that will be a div with a class equal to invalid feedback. Okay. Oops. I need this in here. And we're going to do, that should have been a closing div. And we're going to do one more closing div here. And then inside of here, we're going to do our string literal and add in our error message. All right. And then at the end of this, we need to just return our HTML string. All right, so now we can do select blocks, and looks a little messy because we're doing all the options and all of that and the error checking, but it's actually pretty powerful. The only thing I don't really like about this is like just how many freaking parameters there are. This is the other reason I don't usually like functional programming, just because there ends up being tons of parameters. So but I do overall like this approach. So let's go back to the register view. So we are in the views auth register.php file here, and we need to add another block right here. And so what we're going to do is we are going to add our select block right here by echoing out our form helpers select block. Okay, and then we can close those PHP tags, and then we will for the label, let's just go ahead and pass in role, and then the ID of this is going to be ACL. And then for the for the value, let's just do an empty string. The next thing that we want to do is our options. Let's put in this role underscore options. Okay, and then we're going to do for our input attributes, we're going to give that a class equal to form control. For our wrapper attributes, we'll give that a class equal to form group, also a call medium 6. Okay, and then we're just going to pass this errors as the last element in there. Okay, so now this isn't going to work just yet because we don't have this role option. So let's save that. And then we need to get those role options. So let me look at my reference here, how I did that. Okay, I just built them out manually. So let's go back here, and what we're going to do here is to add those options. We're going to say this view role underscore options is equal to, and we're going to make an associative array. The first element of this associative array, we're just going to put an empty set here, which will create an empty select option at the top. And then we're going to do users, and then we're going to say author permission, and this is going to be all uppercase, by the way, author permission. And for the display of that, we're just going to put author here. And then for the next one, we're going to do users. And this is going to be for admin permission. And for the display of that one, it's just going to be admin. All right. So we need to define these two constants. This is users admin permission and users author permission. So go to the users model here, and we haven't actually done anything with this. So go ahead and open up some PHP tags, and we'll give this a namespace of app / models. Okay, and then we're going to use our core / model here. And then we're going to give this a class of users, and this users class will extend our model class, just like that. And then we're going to need to set up a couple things here. Let's go ahead and first we'll just add those constants we were looking at. So let's just do author permission is just going to be equal to the string of lowercase author, and then we'll do another constant. This will be admin permission, and this will be equal to a string of admin. Okay. The other couple things that we need to do here, and we will add more to this, but we need to add a protected static table, and this is going to be equal to users, like this. Okay. So go ahead and put a semicolon there. And then what I'm going to do here is let's just define all of our columns from our tables like this, just so that they're set by default. So we'll do created at, updated at, and all I'm doing here is if you look in the database, so if you go to another tab and open up localhost php myadmin, and then we go to the CMS table and go to users, and then look at the structure. These columns right here are what I'm going to type in, okay? So we have the ID, we have created at, updated at, then we're going to have fname, lname, email, password, ACL, blocked. Now blocked we're going to set to a default value there of 0. And then we're going to add a couple more that's not in the database, like confirm and remember. We're going to end up using those on our login forms. All right, so we're going to save that now, and this should be good enough to look at our register form. So let's go back to here and refresh. Oop, and we have an error, and it says that our app controller users is not found. And that is because we did not add that in. So up here we need to do our use statement, and we're going to use app /models /users. Okay, and now if I refresh, all right, it's back, and now we have our select here with role, and when I click on it we have author and admin. But let's right click on this and just inspect it and make sure that we have the right values here. So if you look at the authors here, we have author and admins, so this looks correct. Okay, so we have either author or admin there. That's what we want. The other thing is I want to do a little bit more styling just to clean this up just a little bit more. So let's go now and go to the Explorer and go to CSS and open up the styles.css. My AC is kicking back on. All right, for inside the styles CSS, the first thing I want to do is give the HTML and the body. Let's give that some background color, and we're going to give that a background color of FCFAFB. All right, that's all we'll do there. And then what I want to do is let's create that poster class that we added, and this is just going to be a background color of white. Okay. And then let's do padding 18 pixels, and let's do a border radius, and let's do 6 pixels on that. And then let's do a border on this thing, and let's do 1 pixel solid, and then we'll do DDD, which is a really light gray color. So let's go now and refresh and see what that looks like. Hit inspect and right click up here, hit empty cache and hard reload. And there we go. So our CSS file was cached, and that's why that didn't show up. So you might have to do a hard reload or clear the browser cache to see that. But you can see now that we have this nice looking background, and our poster here has white and a white background, and it's got a border radius and a border. So now we have this form. Let's see how much time we've spent on this video so far. So let's see if we can get anything else done here. The one thing that we should probably do now that we have our users class is let's go ahead and set up the default values on this thing. And so what we can do, we don't need the styles open anymore for right now, so we can close that. Let's go back to the auth controller, and now that we've imported this users class, what I'd like to do is at the top of this thing, what we're going to do is set up a new user. We're gonna end up using this for multiple users. So we're going to use the same form for editing users and for adding new ones. And so we need to utilize this ID up here. And so let's go ahead and go back to the URL and just add a /new. And that shouldn't change anything. But now this right here, and it's set by default, so we don't actually have to do that. But what we're going to do is at the top here, we're going to say, hey, if ID is equal to new, then what I'd like to do is say user is equal to new users. So that will create a user object. Else, what we're going to do is we're going to find the user by the ID. So we get to use our users find by ID method, and then we're going to pass in the ID from the URL. So it'll be like that. And we'll test that out a little bit later. Then what we're going to do is we're going to pass that user down to our view. So we're going to say this view user is equal to user. Now we'll have access to that inside of our register view down here, in which I'll show you what we're going to do there in a second. And then let's go ahead and clean up the errors. Instead of having just an empty string here, since we have our user, we can actually use the get errors method. Now, how come I can use this get errors method? Well, that's because users extends this model, right? And the model, if you look in our core and open that up, we have a method in here called get user, if I ever get to it. So yeah, get errors right here. This is in our base model class, okay, our core model class, and all that is a getter to get the errors that start out as an empty array, but we're going to fix that later with form validation. And then this user's model extends that, so it inherits that method, and also all of the other methods and properties in this model class, because we extended that, right? So now we have access to using all the methods. So this user right here is actually an instance of the user's class. So this is an object now. This user variable is storing an instance of, or an object of, that class. So it has access to get errors, just like that. And we're going to pass that entire user object down to our view so that we can use it in our view. And what's really cool now is if we go to our register page, instead of having all these empty, all of these empty things here for our, we can do this. We can say this user fname, and whatever is in that object will have that. So we're going to do that for each one of these. This user lname, this user email, this user ACL. And then for password, we can do the same thing where we say this user password and this user confirm. Now this is going to stop us from having to fill out these again. So if they fill out the form and hit enter, but there's some sort of error, we don't want to empty these out. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be setting these values in the, when they submit the form, we're going to set these values on that user object. So then they'll be stored in there and the form will be correct. Now, the reason that this works is because our user's model, we set up these fname and lname. Now these are all empty, but say for fname, if I had set a default value of Curtis here and we save that, and we go back and refresh here, you can see that Curtis is preloaded here into this form field, which will come in super handy later when we're doing our editing of users, because it'll load that user's information into this form from the database. Okay, so I know that's about as clear as mud, but just go ahead and get rid of this. We don't need that. We do need the F name here, and we don't have any errors. So if we go back and refresh now, we are all good to go. The next thing that we want to do, and I think where we're going to leave off, is let's go ahead and set up in this register action here, below this where we're setting this up, but above where we're setting up our view, we want to check if they have posted any data. Okay, and we can do that. I'm going to just put in, let's put if posted. I'll just put a little comment here, and let's do an if statement. And now, because this is a controller, we have access to this request. Remember, in the last video, we added to our controller an instantiated object of our request. So we can say this request, and then we can say is post. Remember that method we created? So if it's post, then for now, what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and just get our data. So we're going to say data is equal to this. You know what? We're not going to do that. Let's just do an h dump and die. And then inside of here, let's do this request get. And we're not going to pass a name into that, so we should get the entire request object, and it will be the request object will be sanitized. The other thing I need to do though, oh no, well, I don't need to because we already have the H here. So if I save this now and we go back and refresh, what should happen, I'm going to close this down, and then I'm going to fill this out. And we'll give this a role of admin, and then password. And we'll hit save. And now it dumps and dies this, and we can see that we have the F name, L name, email, admin, password, and confirm passed in here. And this is all trimmed and sanitized. So for example, if I would have put in Curtis, and then on my password, I would put a bunch of spaces here. A bunch of spaces. I could have done the same thing on my email address. And we hit save. You can see that the email address and the password have been trimmed. And that's because of that sanitize function. So we always want to access our user inputted data with this request get. Okay, we always want to do that. If we always do that, it's going to be trimmed and it's going to be ran through HTML entities. So it adds a layer of security there. Now, there's other things we need to do to secure it with the database, but we're not there yet. All right, so now that we have that, let's go ahead and call it quits for this video. And the next video, I think what we're going to do is we're going to start doing our form validation to make sure that the data that they pass us is valid data. So I will see you guys in that video. Please comment, like, subscribe, let me know what you think about the series so far later on.